Hi. I'll restart. So my name is Stefan de Pauw, head of the logistics and industrial team of CBRE. And in my role, we get into regular contacts with data centers, um, looking for space to be able to provide the necessary power to their clients. And during these deals, we get into regular contact with the people of A&O Sherman, who are mostly representing the data centers looking for extra space. And within my role, it's a real pleasure to be able to invite these people of Ellen Overy to the stage. And we have Jeff Hermans, which is the data center specialist for Ellen Overy in Belgium. Hello. Hi Jeff.
Hi all.
There's Astrid Leconte, the energy specialist within Ellen Overy for Belgium. And we have Thijs Homveld from Ellen Overy Netherlands, who will be able to draw some parallels with the Dutch data center markets. So welcome everyone, and happy you can join me on stage. So for these hyperscalers, we are seeing they are moving to the emerging markets, of which Belgium is one. We are seeing growing interest from foreign investors, foreign asset managers, and within this panel, we will be looking to some key factors, some key elements for reasons why these data center providers should be coming to Belgium, and how we can improve any negotiation power within this transactional world to be able to come to good agreements with these data centers. First of all, Jeff, I'll come to you. So obviously Belgium is growing as a data center market. We are seeing growing interest. But as Belgium is in the middle of these FLAP D countries, it is obvious that we're not generating the same interest from these data centers as our neighboring countries. So my first question is there any legal or regulatory hurdles that we in Belgium need to come over, or are there any reasons why this should be the case?
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. That's an interesting question, and yeah, let me start with maybe a controversial opinion for somebody active in real estate, like yourself and me. I think that it's not more difficult, or it's actually easier in Belgium to develop data centers than I would say in these countries, part of the FLAP-D regions. And I think it's also easier to develop data centers from a legal perspective than to develop other asset classes. And to explore that further, so again, speaking purely from a legal perspective, not commenting on land availability, power availability, for which we have other experts here, but so to maybe give three reasons or three examples of why I believe that is the case. So maybe the first reason, let's say, is the zoning and permitting regulatory framework in Belgium. Now, obviously, we live in a country where it seems like every month there is a new flavor of permitting issues that people talk about. So this month the flavor is, as you know, windmills. So people complaining about 1,000 complaints for one permit application. I think last month the flavor was rather around just people making a profession out of filing or fighting permit applications and so on. And from what I've seen in data center developments, that is not the reality. And I believe that there are two reasons for this. I would say first that the regulatory framework is still quite flexible, so the zoning framework. So let's say that we've seen data centers being developed on industrial land, we've seen data centers being developed in research park and so on. So there is a lot of flexibility there. Plus, I think a very big factor is also that the issue with a lot of other projects, it's the public opinion, and you simply we're not seeing the same in Belgium as what we are seeing in other jurisdictions on this public opinion. So therefore, I would say that right now the permitting tracks are quite swift, but as a lawyer especially, I need to say that we need to remain vigilant, because I think the booby traps, let's say, of these permit tracks for the future are there. So the public opinion, as we've, for example, seen in other countries, is something that can swift very quickly. That can change very quickly. Where nowadays people are saying, oh, a data center is maybe a good thing. It's better than a logistics asset, because a logistics asset would generate, as you know, a lot of traffic. It's something we will also feel when we go home after this. Well, that's not the same for the data center, but when people start to realizing what impact the data center has, that can also change. I believe that also from a regulatory perspective, the framework in Belgium is very complex. There are a lot of rules, and the tricks that people apply to have other projects trip over, like as you often see with office projects or mixed-use projects or whatever, these tricks, let's say, they are there for people to use. So, yeah, to sum up the point on permitting and zoning, I think that there was a clear first mover advantage for those who have gotten their projects off the ground, but it's uncertain whether this will remain. And then, yeah, maybe for my other two examples, I would tread more in the territory of my colleagues, so I will keep it very short. I think we've seen that for all the EU legislation, so including the EU energy directive, that Belgium has been very slow in implementing it, meaning that it's a bit different from countries like Germany, where additional measures have been imposed on top of what is just stated in the directive. And I think a last example is that I think that in Belgium you have some frameworks where we are kind of front runners. So let's say that, for example, on heat grids, we have developed legislation in Flanders, and we see that the regulatory constraints are not as stringent as, for example, what you see with electricity. So there are, for example, from a legal perspective, opportunities that I see there. So to sum up, I don't think that the reason why Belgium is lagging behind, and in other panels, other reasons have definitely been explored, but I don't think the legal or regulatory framework is the reason why Belgium is lagging behind.
Okay. Good to hear you say that from a legal point of view. I don't have any legal background, but it's good to hear from you. And we do experience the same thing, as in main reason of data center transaction not going through is not the legal or regulatory reason. It's mostly for other reasons, and therefore we will come to Astrid. But thank you, Jeff, for your good explanation. Astrid, we know that power is the main issue and the main driver why these processes take a long time. We know that these data center providers, these hyperscalers, need a lot of power, which might only increase in the future, which makes them to go to innovative solutions to create power. But I think the main question remains the capacity of the electrical grid should increase, should improve. I think we can all agree on this. And you, as an energy lawyer, how do you see, where do you see opportunities in the current framework in Belgium?
Opportunities and challenges?
And challenges as well, yeah.
But you correctly point out that data centers, they consume large quantities of power, and it is a challenge to find the capacities for this power to be supplied. And in exploring how we can resolve that issue, there are strong incentives to look at renewable energy sources to see whether they can fill this gap, can provide solutions to supply power, to increase the capacity that is needed to power data centers. And then there are a couple of points that I think are worth mentioning here. There is, of course, what I would call the energy transition challenge, where we see that data centers are evolving and being developed very, very rapidly. With that development, they need ever more power. And then you see that new technologies, artificial intelligence, we've talked about all this, it further increases the need for power of these data centers. And so if you are then asking, can renewable energy sources provide for the power that is needed to power the data centers, then these green energy solutions need to follow the pace of the developments in the data center market, in the new technologies market. And there we see issues. That is currently not the case. There is a lot of investment that needs to be done. In addition to that, it's not a surprise, but the regulatory framework in Belgium for these renewable energy sources is rather complex. It is fragmented, it is layered, so you have, of course, the EU level, although if you think about solar energy, there is no EU-wide regulatory framework for solar energy, but there are all sorts of initiatives, plans, directives, acts that do touch upon and do have an influence on what is possible and on the potential for renewable energy sources. And then within Belgium, you have several layers of competences, so both on the federal level and on the regional level, there is regulation on electricity, on energy, that all has to be taken into account, and it doesn't make it always easy to go forward. But of course, we're there to navigate through all these regulations. On top of that, there's increasing sustainability requirements imposed by the EU, by governments, by regulators, but also customers of colocation data centers demanding a certain degree of sustainability, proof of sustainability, so that as well has to be taken into account. And I think a final point I want to mention here is that we all want to invest in renewable energy sources and explore the full potential. But there is a point of attention that data centers, they do require large quantities of power, and they do require that power in a reliable, a stable and constant way. Whereas renewable energy, by definition, is generated in a more volatile way. Some days, like today, there's a lot of sun. Other days, we don't see the sun. So that is a challenge for data centers and for the power supply to data centers, which, or the result of which is that, as of today, data centers continue to rely heavily on the grid system, and there's a lot of work still to be done to make them more reliable on renewable energy.
Okay, you said it before we started this panel. In discussing the power, I think we could get an entire day in discussing the power. But it's interesting to hear that also for Belgium, being a difficult country with all the different layers, makes it even more difficult. And good of you on touching the reliability of power as well, because what we see in doing our real estate deals, and it's just real estate, we don't go any further. But of course, power is the main issue, and the reliability or not having too much flexibility on the power is the main issue. And therefore, maybe to conclude on the power. Because we have seen offers coming from Frivis, coming from Elia with lots of flexibility. Is there any more regulations on it? Could we do something for them to come back with offers that are compliant with market with the market, or is there anything we can do on this as from a regulatory point of view? Sorry.
Yeah, what we see there, Stefan, is again actually a mismatch between the market of data centers, which is evolving rapidly, data centers being built in very fast construction times, and this is opposed to investments in the grid, which are to date often very slow. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to take these much needed initiatives to strengthen the grid. But because, again, with data centers consuming a lot of energy and grids having been developed at times when there were no data centers yet, and the consumption of energy was at a different level, these investments are much needed. So we do see in Belgium, but Belgium is no exception. I mean, it's something that we see across jurisdictions, that there is uncertainty as to the access to the grid. You need to get access to the grid. Most data centers get direct access to the grid, but that with studies that are being made by the grid operators, they do impose conditions. They cannot guarantee that stable, uninterrupted power supply. There's also a provision in the electricity law that provides for that flexibility, which is an element of uncertainty that is that goes against the development of data centers. So what we see in practice is that data centers are really looking at backup power supply to ensure that that power supply is uninterrupted. So we see a lot of exploration of battery storage systems, all sorts of smart solutions, intelligent systems to make data centers independent from the grid. But there, and that was exactly what I touched upon before the panel. If you look into these alternative solutions, there's a lot of issues again, or a lot of challenges again that have to be dealt with, which we could probably talk about during another 30-minute panel.
Yeah, and we've heard data centers needing to go back to generators and which of course is then in breach with the sustainability or the sustainable solutions they want to offer to their clients, and so it's I think it's a very difficult equilibrium now. They need to find in coming up with the right solution for their clients. But thank you for giving us some more clarity, and indeed. I think we could go on about this for much longer if we would have the time. But I'm going to you, Thijs, as part of the ANO Schimen team of the Netherlands, because we have seen in the Netherlands that you have been able to keep up with the other European FLAP countries, of FLAP locations, in terms of being able to provide the necessary room for data centers. But what we've heard in the last few months, let's say, that even for the Netherlands, it's becoming a bit more difficult to be able to get the necessary space for the data centers, and that the permitting is the main issue. So after hearing from Jeff and Astrid, could you maybe elaborate on this and give us a better insight on the Dutch data center market as in today?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, I think I would like to comment on a few things that you both already said. I think one of them is and I find that also very interesting, that the public opinion. I think in the Netherlands, obviously we're a bit ahead of the curve in data center developments and in comparison to Belgium. And I think what you saw, that the public opinion at certain stage shifted a bit from data centers maybe taking all the power from the households or whatever, and whether that is justified or not, that led to the legislator taking certain measures to prevent the data center developments increasing further, or at least making it more challenging for new data centers to get built and developed. And that indeed led to additional legislation on several topics. For example, if we're talking about the grid connection, there was new legislation introduced last year that introduced a system for grid operators, so TSOs, to allow them, if grid capacity was not being used, to relocate that. So there was a use it or lose it system has been introduced, which can be challenging in current data center developments to navigate, also when you're having investors and lenders on board, to keep saying, well, we're not going to lose it and we have the capacity in place, we just need a little bit more time for whatever reason to complete the development. So that can cause challenges. Another one is NOx, stikstof in the Netherlands. Due to in the history in the Netherlands, we decided that we designated a lot of Nature 2000 areas. And as a result, we have quite a lot of areas where there is protection in place for nature, which is in the core, of course, a good thing. But as a side effect, it can be challenging to build something nearby such nature areas. And if it comes down to data centers, that would mean that the permitting can become challenging if it is surrounding those Nature 2000 areas. And I think what you see there is that the legislator is lacking a bit in resolving this issue. With case law and courts interfering with permitting taking place, as the legislation is not up to speed with how it should be in order to resolve this and keep construction going, not only in data centers but on several areas, industrial, logistics. It is a broader topic than alone in relation to in data centers. So those are actually indeed two challenges that we currently face in the Netherlands. And yeah, in my opinion, and that links a bit back to the public opinion point that Jeff pointed out. Yeah, maybe because of the growth we had of the data center landscape in the Netherlands, the legislator or the regulator thought, well, we need to slow it down a bit. So legislation came in place.
Yep.
Up till quite recently, that the government of Amsterdam is looking for a full data center stop. And there's also a hyperscale stop more on a government level with only a certain exempted areas, for example. So yeah, that prevents further easy development of much needed data center demand, actually. And yeah, maybe in the core this is also a public opinion point where the politicians thought, well, we need to prevent the negative opinion there may have been on data centers. And yeah, actually it is also a bit silly because we all need and use data center on a day-to-day basis or a minute basis even. And I think that is also maybe a bit shifting on the other hand, due to geopolitical changes, more focused on Europe. You see it also in the energy market, a need for energy independence in Europe, with all the energy initiatives Astrid also mentioned, the battery storage, wind, solar is already commoditized, obviously, and those are all much needed. And also, yeah, I think cause in combination with data and energy, which are both needed for the data centers, obviously, cause hopefully a bit of a shift in the public opinion. You see, for example, the European Union making directives for AI gigafactories to have Europe become more independent of the US dominance in this respect. So on the one hand, you see local and governments preventing easy development of data centers. On the other hand, you see on the EU level, and also the Dutch government is pursuing one of those AI gigafactories. So those are a bit contradictory, and maybe that is due because the politics are also always a bit behind the public opinion. So it's a very important aspect of this all. So yeah, those are two challenges, and as a result, we do see a lot of activity, M&A activity, financing and refinancing activity in the Dutch data center market, because the product the new product is getting more scarce, but there's a lot of product, of course, which need to be refinanced, or where investors are trying to take a stake in, or shifts more on a higher level. And a point of attention there is always, in particular, if we're talking about the hyperscalers and the dominance of the few parties that are dominating that market, so the Google, Microsoft, and Oracle, etc., because they have such highly sophisticated offtake agreements with very dense change of control clauses, for example. Those can be challenging to navigate in all these activity that we see in existing data center product, but there's a lot of traction still, and that is a good thing. And yeah, it seems a bit like the public opinion is shifting, and hopefully, and also the Dutch Data Center Association, for example, is promoting this. Also today, I saw that the politicians see the need to provide a more flexible framework and allow more possibilities for the much needed data centers in the Netherlands, and yeah, I expect the same would apply for Belgium.
So right now in the Dutch market, you don't feel that any demand can't find the space. I mean, there is no there's no lack of supply of places where data centers can go to right now. Or do you already feel some discrepancies between demand and supply in the Dutch market as a cause of the regulations?
No, I think you can see that, and that is why there's increased activity in relation to the existing data centers, where investors are trying to get on board, and instead of developing a new data center, because there's no location available, or the regulation is too challenging. So yeah, you see that effect, and I think it was already mentioned that could be a benefit for Belgium, which it's only a few kilometers away, obviously. Yeah. So why stick to the Netherlands? You could easily
as a
think.
Belgian, that's music to my ears.
Yeah.
And for once that we don't have the most difficult regulations, right? And let's hope that the public opinion remains how it is right now, and we don't get any more sophisticated or difficult regulations as opposed to data centers like we see it now. I'm getting word that we need to end up this panel. I want to thank Thijs, Astrid, and Jeff for coming to stage and give their very clear and helpful explanations on the regulatory market, both on the legal side and the power side. So thank you very much, and I will leave the word to the floor to the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you.